And we have one more presentation today. So let's welcome to the stage. I think that we're ready. Hugo Guerrero, APIs and Integrations Dev Advocate at RedHat, who's going to talk to us a little bit about GraphQL mocking, why it's important to productivity for developers. Welcome, Hugo.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me to GraphQL 2022. So I'm really glad to be here. I want to talk about one of my favorite topics, that it's being able to do some dirty tricks to be able to increase developer productivity and try to achieve that 10x engineer that sometimes we read about in social media and things like that. So I'm going to give you a dirty secret and trick on how to do that when you're using GraphQL and when you're developing with GraphQL. And it needs to be related with mocking. So um, uh, before going a little bit deep into this, I'm just going to do quick introductions. My name is Hugo. I'm a Mexican based in Massachusetts in the United States. And I am a APIs developer advocate with Red Hat. But I'm also an open source contributor. So I contribute to different projects. I love history, travel, food enthusiast. So glad to be here. Been doing API space for a long time. So I'm adding here my Twitter handler if you want to follow or continue the conversation outside of the event, so we can also you can also read all the material and the content that we are publishing every day. And I want to talk about the API concept, and this slide goes mostly related to the I on API. So most of the times when we are talking about APIs, a lot of people think that the I represents or means implementation. However, it is coming from application programming interface. So the interface or the contract or this agreement between the consumer and the producer and the server for APIs, it's very important. And this is what we are going to be focusing on this session, as well as in the area. So when you're doing APIs, it's because you want to do decoupling of your systems, when you're doing connectivity with your applications, mobile to backend, or between services, gRPC, REST, Kafka, everything like that. And the idea of GraphQL is that you can innovate faster because you are obviously being able to handle better the way to request queries and information that it's being generated by your server. So how can you do that at scale? How can you get this productivity as a developer when you are trying to consume services that are being exposed as a graph? So most of the time when we're talking about APIs, we're talking also about some challenges related to this. So some of those challenges are related to shorten the feedback loop. So you want to see as soon as possible if there's something that it's broken with your application, or you also want to be able to parallelize your development. So you don't want to wait until your backend team is ready with the server, so you can start creating your front end or your mobile application and such. And also, you can also be able to have this challenge of how do I validate that my implementation it's actually the thing that I'm showing. So number 3 is more related with things like testing and such. But 1 and 2, it's more on our talk today that is related to mocking. So I want to show you this image. So most of the times when we are developing our new APIs, GraphQL, REST, event-driven APIs, we usually have this kind of standoff in between 3 persons in the organization. Most of the times it's we think about just front end and back end, trying to wrestle and try to be able to provide as soon as possible all the requirements. But also business, it's most of the times left behind. However, it has a very important relation with how do we create mocks, how do we define the contract, how do we define the examples. So it's very important to be able to also share this with business and being able to reflect with reality what's the kind of API that we are going to be creating, that we're going to be consuming, that we're going to be crafting. So it is part of this equation that we need to avoid forgetting. So talking about the schemas and types are the new contracts. So in the past, when we used to do SOA and SOAP type of APIs, we used to have these contracts, very verbose and things like that. We are shifting to things more agile, more lightweight, but still things like schemas and types are the way to share and to be able to have this agreement with people on what are we going to be delivering. So when talking about GraphQL, the schema becomes the central piece to define exactly what is the structure of the data that we are going to be returning. Yes, you can define which objects and the depth of the graph and what kind of fields you are going to be requesting, but most of the time you agree that you need to select from a previous agreed list of fields that are going to be available for each one of the objects that you're going to be consuming. So that's why the focus on contracts for being able to do testing and mocking of your APIs becomes very important. So I have a quick poll for you. If you are able to read the QR code that is showing right now in the slide, or you could just go into the site and put information into the from the number. You can help me out to answer this question. So if you are planning to do mocking, you need to define the schema you are going to be using. So what kind of toolings are you using for that? Are you using an ID plugin? Are you using an online editor? Are you just generating the schema from your code, actually? Or you are not using any tool at all? So if you want to read that QR code or join into the page, I would really appreciate to know exactly how you are getting the information, and we can revisit this at the end. So let's get back to contracts, and then one of the things that we are missing is the concept of examples. So this is very interesting because other type of APIs are moving into this concept of the specification to define the API, but most of them have been adding this concept of examples. So if I have a schema or I have an API, I am able to define how the response look like. Depending on each one of the queries or the mutations, we are able to see exactly how it looks like. So it is important to be able to have this pair together between contract and examples, because when we are just generated examples, randomly, you just generated trash or garbage just to fill the type of the data type that we are adding to our objects. Sometimes we are losing the value of the examples itself. So when we are able to instead of having these regenerated examples, being able to create and craft real life examples, we are able to include and involve the business, as I was mentioning before, to be able to put into the examples the expectations of the business, perhaps information that really makes the example more valuable for anyone that it will be reading that example or be receiving that example or being able to use that. So in this way, we are translating this contract into specifications also from the business perspective by adding those examples. And then when we have this paired together, when we have the contract from one side and then the examples, then we're going to be we can then use them to do things like mocking, as we're going to be doing right now, as well as testing. So we can validate that the implementation side that we are receiving are going to be able to fulfill that contract based on the examples and perhaps the nums that we're receiving. So how do we translate those contracts and examples into GraphQL? Well, the contract, as I was mentioning before, it's very straightforward. It's the schema DSL that it's available, and you are very familiar to regarding on how to consume your schema, your GraphQL. But then there's the concept of examples. I was saying the example, you can add comments to your schema, but it's not as useful. So there are other ways to add examples. So one of the ways that we will be showing is having this secondary artifact that is the complement for your API that is, for example, a Postman collection. So this Postman collection allows you to define, based on one request, an example for the request as well as an example for the response. So when we have those examples and we can match them together into the and relate them to the schema, we are able to have this pair that allows us to have back query on our schema as well as example to return on that query. So this is basically the ground the ground for for mocking, for GraphQL mocking. And then when you have this contract, when you have examples, then you can go to the next step, and it's basically start to fake it until you make it. This is a very important concept because this is basically one of the keystones to be able to have this productivity that we want, right? So if we are faking it, if we have a mock that it's able to return some information, you can decouple that dependency with your backend, with your server that is being developed at the same time. You can then run in parallel between different teams and being able to consume and start developing and doing innovation. If there's something that's broken or is not incomplete or that is generating issues, you can get back the feedback as soon as possible when you are able to mock it. Now, there has been some comments in the past regarding that, if you use mocks for your unit test, that's not testing, that it's something that it needs to be avoided and such. And in my case, the take is that when you're doing mocking for your testing or just for validation of your deployment, it's just it's another tool that you have available in your toolbar to be able to get this productivity speed. Yes, in the future you will need to actually have a staging or an integration environment. You will need to actually go and consume and hit directly the real service that will be able to provide you with a full complete testing scope. However, if you are able to tackle things like contract testing and some quick validations in the inner loop when you are developing your application, you are getting this productivity, you're getting this speed to be able to then send your next build to the next stage. So in my take, it's fake it until you make it. And now, if you are going to be doing the GraphQL mocking, well, there are different ways to do it, but one of the things that the ones that I like and I'm really interested in is, for example, Microx. So Microx is this open source project that allows you to do API mocking and testing, not only for GraphQL but for other different type of APIs, REST, Sync, and gRPC, and things like that. But the one that really interests us is the one related with GraphQL. So with GraphQL, you can define your specification, basically your contract or your schema with your pair with the Postman collection, and then being able to automatically generate a mock server that's able to serve those mocks directly as part of an endpoint. So this is very useful because if you have that information, then you're able to provide those mocks and being able to expose them either locally, if you're running that service in your lab, as we're going to be seeing the demo, or you can just deploy that in a Kubernetes service or in another virtual machine and be able to share that between teams, so you can collaborate in this centralized mocking service. Obviously, the Microx also allows you to do the contract testing side that I was talking about, and it's related to validate that when you're connecting to the actual mock, to the actual endpoint, you can see that the generated data it's compliant with the respective structure of the contract and examples you already have. So this is very, very useful too. But the mocking side is what we really want to focus right now. Now, the interesting thing about Microx is that it does not require you to code anything at all. So you don't need to think about the mock server or where you're going to be running. So it removes that away from you. It's available in the service or in the application, so you can just define that with your contract, with your examples, and then Microx takes care of that and generates the endpoint, so you can start hitting them with your clients and being able to start using them. I know that this is pretty interesting, so it is time for some magic, or basically our demo time. So I'm gonna switch here gears, and then we have different options for running micros. So I'm gonna show you the quickest one. So there's a Docker desktop extension, so running container. No need to install anything, but a container, so you can download or install the extension for micros. You can just launch micros, and this will start the service that you will be having running locally. So you will be able to access a site like this, that it's localhost 8081. And this is basically the service where you can see information about micros. Now, as I was saying, we have two things to do with this. So the first one is related to the service. So in this case, I'm using one application that's called APIscene. So APIscene has a registry where I can just see that I have to log in first, and then being able to see a main service, and where I have stored a specification. I can see versions. I can just store this. So we have a centralized repository for my artifacts, and we have a very easy, very simple schema. Here for micros, I need to add some comments just to be able to have information about a version for this mock service, as well as the name. So book graph API. Now that I have that, I can download this, and I can then start to work with mocks. So we'll do this a little bit bigger. So in Postman, if you want to create a collection with Postman desktop, you can just import, and you can use the file that you can download from the registry. So if you want to just download this, you can then load this, and it will automatically create a service where all the different collections. And as I was saying, here, when you have your different queries, you can just generate your example for your query. And the good thing about micros is that you can also have you cannot have hard-coded data like tile here, but you can also have some functions that allows you to dynamically generate some templating and some data. So you can, for example, in this case, just generate a random UID, and you can use some other functions to validate and generate some different data. Now that you have that defined, you can define this for all the different services. In this case, I just have an example here for books. And this is how it looks, right? So it's a simple Postman collection. You have your different services. You have a way to relate with by the name with the response. So we have an example of how it looks like. And now that you have the schema as well as the collection, then you can just upload that into micros. And there's two ways to upload that information. So you can either just do a local upload, and you can just take the information that you have in your laptop, or you can create an importer, and this importer just connects to your GitHub repository. So you can tell this is the URL where my schema is and where my Postman collection is, and then after that, it creates a job that starts pulling those links, so you can then automatically load all the changes that you have. So after your CI/CD pipeline runs, and then you are moving into the environment your new version or your new release of the service, as well as the Postman collection, you can commit that into Git, and you are able to get that information available as a service. So I have here my book graph API, and automatically I can see obviously the schema of the service. So I can just reference the same contract. And I have these operations that are available in my query. So here I can see that I have one mock that it's available for all books. So in this case, it automatically generates a mock URL based on the data, and gives me an example of how it looks like when I return this kind of query. So it's basically the random UI and the city and class. So this service is running, but it's being run by Microx. So Microx generates this URL, and it will become the server that will be returning this information. So let's go and see if it runs. So let's go and do testing. So this URL is exactly the one that I got here. Let me do a little bit bigger. So this mock URL is available here. This is the one that we are going to be using for Postman, and we are going to be using a query. So in this case, I can do ID and title, and then I will see that we can then return this data. So when I do click send, okay, I'm receiving my information. So I'm getting an ID and a title that's available in the example that I attached. And as you can see, it's automatically generating a UID using this random function. So those random functions can be, so those functions can be randoms, or can be, simulate a name, simulate a address, or things like that. So there's it's based on Faker, so you can have different type of functions that are going to be available. So every time we send an example, we send a request to the mock service. Every example it's going to be different, because these ID it's being replaced. Also, if we change the query, we can see, and then it's being handled by the mock server, and automatically returns information based on the query that we are requesting. So this is a very easy and simple way to run Microx and to have a service. These can be just running on your laptop if you want, or you can just deploy this on a Kubernetes service, and being able to have this available for your different teams, for your whole organization in a centralized way. So it is important when you have contracts and when you find examples that you are going to be able to centralize that in a single place, so you can then have a single source of truth based on, for example, your Git repository. So you know that everyone that is using those mocks and that mocking service, it's using the latest version, and nothing is broken in your own local build. So it's a very very interesting way to simplify and get more productive from the development perspective. Now, I want to give you some mocking takeaways and final words regarding GraphQL mocking and developer productivity. So as I was saying, the idea of mocking is that you can simplify the collaboration, you can reuse some assets, you can share that information across different teams, you can have a single source of truth, and then being able to have a way to move forward with your mocking. You can also get more faster feedback, so you can get on the innovation, you can try to do improvements on your APIs. And also, if you're working from the consumption perspective using a mock service that is already just using and requiring an example, you don't need to think about coding, having to maintain the code that is going to be serving those mocks, and updating them automatically with the cron jobs. It's easier to have that, so you can focus on actually creating your application. So if you're planning to interact with other kind of tooling, certainly you can do things like solve REST and such. So I was saying, can also become something related to testing. So if you want to go and do some contract testing, that's something that you can also do. And it can also become a depot for your mocks and tests. So you can share them between teams, so you can go to the Microx Central side, and you can see different APIs that are being added by different parties, like the bank open banking APIs, or other type two APIs like Terraform and HashiCorp APIs. So the idea is to have this community to be able to share all this information, all these mocks available, so you don't need to create your own, unless obviously your API is very specialized, so you can also create your own and use them locally. If you want more information, there are a couple of links here. It's going to be available as part of the slide, so you can go and directly on the Apidays GraphQL documentation and blog post on how to get started. If you want to do continuous testing, there's also information. And if you want more information, if you want to join the community, there's a silly chat where we are hanging around, so you are able to join there and get any questions over there. And finally, a request from my side to you. It's related to your help on this. If you think that you have some time, please try Microx, give it a try, check if it works for you, if it is something that is really valuable for you. If you find that it's something that you find useful, please remember to distribute, fork it. It's fully open source, so 100% open source. You can try and play with that. And if you really, really, really love it, you think that something is missing, and you really want to collaborate, then please contribute. PRs are always welcome. We are eager to learn more about how you're using GraphQL and how can we help you out with your development experience. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the time. I hope you enjoyed the session. I know it's a little bit late, so we are almost there. And Brian, I think if there's any questions, we can certainly try to address them.
Yeah, we've got one, but let's go ahead and give a round of applause with those emojis in chat. And we have a question from Dylan asking if Microx import capabilities are available programmatically. And if so, could you create a script for the creation and ingestion of mocked data?
So there's an API. It's in the works. It's a little bit rudimentary, but most of the time what you will be doing is using your CI/CD process to update this information. So that's the job importer side that I was showing. I mean, I didn't import that from Git, but the idea is that if you are updating the mocks, you can just push them into Git, and then Microx will get that information back and then update with information with the latest version of your mock data. So
basically, instead of trying to programmatically do it, you version control it and let the version controlling and Microx handle it from there.
Yes.
And then I've got kind of a philosophical question. You mentioned during the presentation that sometimes people kind of scoff at fake content, but that it's important for developer productivity. What level of fidelity do you recommend for fake content, for mock content? Like, how close do you need to get it, and how much time should you focus on like getting decent fake content?
That's why I was mentioning at the beginning when showing the judokas that with the business, most of the time you will expect the business to be able to provide that information because they are the owners of that information, the ones that know exactly what is a valuable sample that you should be using for your development. So that's why I tell every single time that business needs to be involved in the definition of these examples and contracts. And that's why using this approach with no code it's so valuable, because in this case you can just tell the business, just give me the example, and then I can use that as creating a mock. So the data can be something more closest to that. So basically the answer is as much as possible to real data.
Awesome. Let's see. Doc Jones is asking, how many people are actively working on Microx right now?
It's a very small team. I would say no more than 5 right now. It's a spin-off of some of the work that we have been doing in RedHat. So I didn't mention this in the past, but RedHat, you know us for Linux most of the times, but we also do have a lot of work in the API space. We do a lot of middleware related work with Quarkus, JBoss, and all these parts. But we also are using GraphQL internally. So this is some of the collaboration that we do on the open source communities, and yeah, a few people right now.
Nice. And then Ty Cooper is getting very data-driven right now and asking, what are some like average speed increases in development time that you might have seen from people who have utilized things like Microx?
That's a very good question. I don't have the number right now. I know that we have, uh, financial institutions, banks using Microx for the teams, and they have been giving us the feedback that it's really working for them because they allow them to have these single place where they can just share the mocks easily. But yeah, I certainly will get that data as soon as possible to be able to get back with the real number.
Awesome. And this is another question from Doc Jones about where can they find more information on how Red Hat is using GraphQL? They're very curious, all ears.
Well, actually, I'm not sure we have published anything that it's actually public facing, because most of the GraphQL usage that we have, it's on the background. Like if you have ever access the console.redhat.com, where you can see all your subscriptions, all the information about your Linux systems. Some of those systems are using GraphQL to create that information, the insights, the information about your usage of services are running on this kind of services. Most of them are internal, so I'm not sure the team working on that is actually publishing something already, but we usually use that internally, and the usage is increasing.
Well, it certainly sounds like there's an audience, at least here, for case studies and that sort of thing around how y'all are
Yeah,
doing
I
it.
think I will ask the team to be able to publish something and talk more about what we have been doing internally.
Awesome. Well, that looks like that is it for our questions. I'll give it one more scan real fast. Oh, okay. Doc is also asking if the content site is using GraphQL or if that's not GraphQL.
I know the subscription manager, the customer portal certainly is using it. The rest of the elements of the web presence, I'm not sure about that.
Fair enough. All right, Hugo. Well, thank you so much for sharing these insights and all the information on mocking with GraphQL. I appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, everyone.